Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the John Campea Show here on this magnificent Tuesday on my YouTube channel. And I am, of course, your host, John Campea. It is an honor and privilege, as always, to have you guys joining me here today for the shows. We talk about all of our favorite stuff in the world of movies and TV and all that other types of good stuff. And here's how today's show is going to go, guys. I have picked out 5 questions and topics from the emails that you guys have sent in to me. Now, how do you get an email or a topic on the John Campea Show? It's quite simple. You just email me anytime at john@thejohncampeashow.com. Make sure you put the word topic in the subject line or else it won't get on the show. And also, make sure you keep your emails to 90 words or less, or else I can't even fit it on the screen in the first place. Once we get through those 5 email topics that you guys have sent in, I'm going to go over to the live viewers, and I'm going to save some time at the end of the show for the live viewers. And if you guys are watching live, how do you get a live question on? Maybe see your tweet pop up on the screen. It's simple. Just tweet to me simply at John Campea, and I'll get through just as many tweets near the end of the show as I absolutely possibly can. All right, guys. So with that out of the way, let's not waste any more time. Let's dive right into it, and we go to the first question of the day. And the first question today comes to us from Rayan Butt, who writes, what are your opinions on some of the movies being released recently that rely a lot on music and songs to tell their stories, like Guardians of the Galaxy or Baby Driver? Do you think it can be considered a cheap way to make the audience feel emotions, or is it just yet another tool in the filmmaker's arsenal? And thanks a lot for the question, Ryan. And yeah, so you look at movies like this one right here, Baby Driver. I think it's still in my top 5 of the year. It's either my top 5 or top 6 of the year so far. Just a magnificent film by Edgar Wright. Or if you look at a film like Guardians of the Galaxy, which had such a strong soundtrack to it, Guardians of the Galaxy 2 had a good soundtrack as well, but I just thought the soundtrack in the first Guardians worked better. Actually, overall, I thought the first Guardians worked better, but whatever. You do start to have some of these movies that really put a big emphasis on their soundtrack. Not their score, but their soundtrack, right? With all the songs that they use and things like that. Is it a cheap way for a movie to try to elicit connection with the audience? I will say no. Any more than using the visuals of a forest or a lake or New York City or using any type of a visual element is a cheap way to try to make a connection with the audience. Look, the whole idea of filmmaking is to connect with the audience to create an experience. You guys have heard me say that before. Movies are nothing if not an experiential experience. It's something you go to experience. And we go into movies to get an experience, whether it's an experience of fear in the sense of horror films, or shock, or fear of, or emotions or experiences of warmth, or emotions of laughter and joy, feelings, an experience of excitement, whatever it is. We go into movies to have an experience, and different types of movies aim to give us different types of experiences. And I think when you're talking about movies like Guardians of the Galaxy or Baby Driver or others in the past that have used soundtrack, like one of my favorite all-time movies, Moulin Rouge, is really heavy music and soundtrack focused. This music and stuff like that are just another tool in the filmmaker's belt. Any more than visual effects are just another tool in the filmmaker's tool belt. Or, comedy is just a tool in the filmmaker's tool belt. And when you say things like, there's so many movies coming out with all these soundtracks, well, not really. I mean, maybe out of the 500 movies that come out this year, maybe 6 or 7 will have any type of a reliance on soundtrack. That's an extremely small percentage. And when you're dealing with these movies as well, it's not like the soundtracks are just popped in there for no reason. You take example of Baby Driver right here, like Baby in it, his reliance on music is part of the narrative. That's actually part of the story. So the soundtrack isn't just there for the sake of having a cool soundtrack. It's actually an integral part of the story. If you've seen Baby Driver, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't seen Baby Driver, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But Baby, listening to music and the soundtrack and the important part that music, from a very practical point of view, plays in his life, that plays into the narrative. With Guardians of the Galaxy, like when you understand the backstory of Peter Quill, of Star-Lord, you understand the emotional importance to Peter of those songs, of that soundtrack, why it's so important to him that he would risk his life to get back his music, because if you understand the background that it played and the role his mother played in giving that music to him and all that kind of stuff. So it's not like even these movies you're pointing out are gratuitously using these soundtracks. They play integral parts of the narrative themselves. And for that, I think, hey, music and soundtrack is just another tool in the filmmaker tool belt. But like any tool, some filmmakers could abuse it. You know, some filmmakers of visual effects heavy movies just rely on their visual effects instead of making their visual effects a part of the narrative. So that can happen, but in the examples of Baby Driver and Guardians, I think we're perfectly fine there. All right, thanks a lot for the question, man. All right, we move on now to the next topic. And the next topic today comes to us from Optimus The Gamer. Hey, John, do you think the cramped summer box office next year just might be the biggest box office in history? And who will rule the summer box office? Avengers Infinity War, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, Incredibles 2, Deadpool 2, Predator. Do you think, again, Jurassic World will beat Avengers like it did in 2015? Thanks a lot for the question, man. And yeah, if you're looking at next summer, and I've pulled up a list here, there's even a bunch you didn't have a chance to mention there. The summer movie season in 2018 is just nuts and totally packed. And yes, like many summers, it has the potential, I'll say the word potential, to be the biggest summer of all time. I mean, just look at some of those movies you listed with Jurassic World, Incredibles 2, Avengers, all that kind of stuff. So yes, it has the potential. Will it be? Far too early to tell. And you know what the funny thing is? What's going to be, I think, the deciding factor on if the summer of 2018 becomes like the biggest box office summer in history won't be the big name movies. It won't be Jurassic World that determines if it becomes the biggest summer for movies ever. It won't be Avengers Infinity War that determines it. I'm going to suggest it's actually going to be those second tier movies that will determine. If those second tier movies can make a lot of money as well, then you're talking about it happening. But it's not going to be those big ones on their own, because we've had some very, very big summers. And it's going to be those movies that aren't the big headline movies that I think we're going to make the difference. Now, as far as the other question about, do I think Jurassic World can beat Avengers Infinity War, much like, the first Jurassic World, beat out Avengers? I don't think so. I don't think there's a chance of that this time around. And the reason being for that is because I think a lot of people will agree, even people who love Jurassic World, will acknowledge that part of the big box office success of Jurassic World, even though we didn't see it coming, was the fact that the novelty of it. Jurassic World is back, the big giant dinosaurs and all that kind of stuff. And I liked Jurassic World. I thought Jurassic World was good. I didn't think it was great, but I thought it was good. But there are a lot of people out there who didn't share my enthusiasm for Jurassic World. There was a lot of people out there who did go out and see it that didn't love the film and didn't think it was good. Even they just had a lot of problems with it. I think the second time around, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom is going to make a lot of money. Make no mistake about it, it's going to make a lot of money. But will it make $1.5 billion? I think it'll join the $1 billion club, but I don't think it's going to hit 1.5. And I do think Avengers Infinity War will hit 1.5. So this time around, nope, I'm going to go out on a limb and say I think between Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom and Avengers, I think Avengers will be the number one movie that summer. Actually, not just between the two of them. I think Avengers Infinity War will be the number one box office movie that summer, maybe of the year. Because we don't have a Star Wars episode movie coming out that year. We just have Han Solo. And while I do think Han Solo will join the $1 billion club, I don't think it's going to do much more than $1 billion. I think Avengers Infinity War will be the number one box office movie in 2018, and that includes beating Jurassic World. But you never know. We've seen stranger things happen. We'll have to wait and see. All right, let's move on now to the next question. And the next question today, if I can get it to pull up here. There we go. The next question today comes to us from one of my Patreon supporters, Jeff Bingham, who writes, "The reasons Age of Ultron did not reach the heights of its predecessor was that it lacked the novelty factor from the first film of individual heroes teaming up for the first time. Age of Ultron was pretty much the same team, plus only a few additions. Can Infinity War regain a sense of novelty, considering this will be the first time that the Guardians of the Galaxy will be fighting alongside the Avengers, along with almost every other Earth-based hero?" Thanks a lot for the question, man. And I think where Jeff's question is coming from is the fact that on the show the other day, I was asked, do I think Avengers Infinity War will join the $2 billion club? To which I said no. I said no, and I still believe the answer is no. And I think that's an unfair expectation. Only 3 films in history have ever hit the $2 billion mark. So I think that's a radically unfair expectation to put on the film. I think that's radically unfair. I think if it hits 1.5, 1.6, 1.7, everybody should be dancing in the streets, because that'll make it one of the most successful movies of all time. Now, the reason I said that I do not believe that, and everybody knows I love Avengers. I mean, I cannot wait to see Avengers Infinity War. But the reason I believe that, $2 billion is just too high of a bar at this point is because none of the facts that we have would logically lead you to believe that it would. All right, so what I said the other day was simply this. If you look at all the Marvel Cinematic Universe films, the biggest one ever was 1.5 billion. That is the biggest one ever. And that's a huge number. 1.5 billion is a massive number, one of the most successful movies of all time. Captain America Civil War, which is basically an Avengers movie. I mean, come on. And it introduced us to Black Panther for the first time. And it introduced us to Spider-Man for the first time. So we had several new, big, key, significant characters coming along. Captain America Civil War didn't hit 1.5. As a matter of fact, let me just pull up here. I didn't have it ready, but I will right here. Civil War, Captain Box Office. Let's see what Captain America... Yeah, Captain America, which was huge, did $1.1 billion. 1.1. There is nothing here to suggest that double the amount of people are going to go out and see Avengers Infinity War. Double than went to go see Captain America Civil War. Captain America Civil War is a huge success. $1.1 billion. Amazing. There is nothing to suggest that Infinity War double that, because who's going to see the movie that didn't see it before? Like, that's the question I keep bringing up, is like, out of that $1.1 billion of people who went to go see that, you think there's another $1 billion worth of people who are interested in Marvel Cinematic Universe movies that didn't go to see Captain America Civil War? It just doesn't make sense. Now, look, I'm not saying it's not possible. Of course it's possible. I was one of the people that said Jurassic World will never beat Avengers. And look what happened. It did happen. So it's totally possible. But I think the odds are incredibly unlikely. And you bring up that, but, Avengers Age of Ultron didn't have the novelty of new characters. Well, Captain America Civil War did. Is our first appearance of Spider-Man in the new MCU. And they played him heavy in the trailers. It was the first appearance of Black Panther in the new MCU. That was pretty key and pretty important. So, and that made $1.1 billion. So I just don't see, it's fine for fans to go, yes, it'll make $2 billion easy. But when I press my friends on it who are like, yes, Avengers will hit $2 billion. When I press them on it, it's like, okay, that's fine that you believe that. That's cool. But present me some facts that will back it up. Because I've got some facts right here and some numbers that back up my assertion that it is not going to hit $2 billion. Look at all the history of it. Look at the most recent films. Look at the new characters that have been added. There is nothing mathematically or from a quantitative point of view that suggests Avengers will hit $2 billion. It's just too much of a reach, and I believe an unfair expectation. And here's what I'm worried about. As a fan of comic book movies and as a fan of Avengers, my fear is this, is that a bunch of fans are going to get carried away saying, Avengers Infinity War is going to hit $2 billion. And when it doesn't, because it ain't, anything's possible. It could. I hope it does. Fingers crossed. But when it doesn't hit $2 billion, these people who are spreading around all this talk about Avengers is going to hit $2 billion, Avengers is going to become the 4th film in the $2 billion club, and it doesn't, then people are going to go, oh, Avengers Infinity War underperformed. And I'm going to scream. Because I'm going to say, what the fuck are you talking about, underperformed? The movie made $1.6 billion or made $1.7 billion or however much it's going to make. And people are actually going to go with a straight face and go, oh, well, what went wrong? That's the fear, that everybody's going to hype up this Avengers Infinity War is going to hit $2 billion. And when it doesn't, everybody's going to go, oh gosh, what do you think went wrong, John? Nothing went wrong. It's an incredible success. There's nothing to suggest it's going to hit $2 billion. I hope those of you who are saying it will hit $2 billion, I'm on your team. I hope you're right. Like, I hope you're dead right, and I hope I'm dead wrong. And I will celebrate with you if it's good enough to hit $2 billion and it does it. I'm going to be dancing in the streets with you. I'm going to be partying with you and going, thank God you were right and I was wrong. I hope so. But as a fan, I look at the numbers. I look at the plain math. There is nothing to suggest that this movie is going to become the next movie to join the $2 billion club. There's nothing out there quantitatively to suggest it, except for pure blind optimism. And that's great. Pure blind optimism is wonderful. I've got a lot of pure blind optimism for a lot of movies. But I just want us to temper our expectations. Because when Avengers Infinity War comes out, and it doesn't hit $2 billion, I hope we can be smart enough to bypass all this nonsense of, oh, what went wrong? The movie made $1.7 billion. Why are you asking me what went wrong? Everything went right. Yeah, but it didn't hit $2 billion. What happened? Why was it bad? Why did it fail, John? And I'm going to scream. I'm going to completely scream at that point. So anyway, but again, this has been a topic and a debate that's been going on. Will it hit $2 billion? We're, half a year away from finding out if it will or not. And again, it's possible. It's possible. If Jurassic World can happen, anything is possible. I'm just saying it's a very small percentage chance, and your smart money would be betting on it not hitting $2 billion. And I just hope that when it doesn't, people don't flip out and go, why did it fail? Why did it underperform? Like I said right now, Kevin Feige is not expecting this movie to make $2 billion. He's hoping for it to hit what the first Avengers hit at 1.5. And when it hits 1.5, everybody should be happy. Everybody should be thrilled. Okay, so sorry, I ranted on that long enough. I really should move on to the next thing. But before I move on to the next question, that question came to us from one of my Patreon supporters. And this is the time of the show that I do my little commercial break where I shamelessly plug my Patreon. Guys, I left the corporate overlords. I no longer do this for corporations. I decided to branch out and do this on my own. And the only way that is possible is by the people who have stepped up and become my Patreon supporters. What does my Patreon do? How does it help out? How does it make the shows happen? What are the benefits? Do me a favor, if you enjoy my programming, or if you spend any time during the month watching my programs, head on over to www.patreon.com/John Campea. There will be all the information about what it means to become one of my Patreon supporters, how it helps me make these shows, and most importantly, the advantages that Patreon supporters get, including audio-only versions of the John Campea Show and Star Wars Talk Tuesdays, an exclusive Facebook group, and a number of exclusive chats that we do on video every single week with my supporters. So go on over, check that out, and see if becoming one of my Patreon supporters is for you. It makes my shows possible. And if not, that's totally fine. I'm just happy you're here talking about movies with us. All right, now also before I move on to the next question, I should announce that, hey, it's the best day of the week. It's Tuesday today. That means a little bit later today at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's Star Wars Talk Tuesdays, where we're just going to talk Star Wars for like 45 minutes. So make sure you come back to the channel at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, or watch it later if you want. But we're going to be doing it live at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time today. Star Wars Talk Tuesdays, a little bit later today. Okay, now let's get on to the next question. And the next question comes to us from Tom Otto, who writes, "Hey John, big fan, thank you so much. Lord of the Rings trilogy was awesome. Absolutely it was. All three were nominated for Best Picture. But why weren't any of the actors nominated for any awards? Elijah Wood, Ian McKellen, and Sean Astin come to mind for Best Supporting Actors or Best Actor for Wood." Thanks a lot for the question, man. And yeah, let's look for a second just at the Lord of the Rings trilogy, Return of the King. Okay? Just look at Return of the King. Return of the King, no film in history has won more Academy Awards than Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. No film in history. Two others have tied with it from ages and ages ago, but no other film in history has won more Academy Awards. I believe the number is 11. The Academy Awards won 11 awards that year. which was just incredible. I mean, that's insane. But out of all the categories it was nominated for, and Lord of the Rings Return of the King was nominated in 11 categories. 11. And it swept. It won every single category it was nominated for. But none of those awards were for the acting. And here's an interesting thing. The Screen Actors Guild gave Best Ensemble Cast of the Year to The Lord of the Rings Return of the King that year. So the question is, why haven't any of the actors got awards? Well, first of all, that's not quite true. Ian McKellen here did get nominated, I believe it was for Best Supporting Actor, for Lord of the Rings Fellowship of the Ring, the first Lord of the Rings film. Ian McKellen, it's the only acting Academy Award nomination that any of the Lord of the Rings films got, but it was for the first Lord of the Rings film, and it was this guy, Ian McKellen, did get nominated. He didn't win, but that's what he did get nominated for that. Okay, so why didn't any of them win acting awards? Well, because there were a lot of actors with a lot of high, powerful performances that year that just didn't leave any room. So I think it's fair to say Ian McKellen would have been a supporting actor. The only person who really would have qualified for Best Lead Actor would have been, Frodo. Okay. Well, then let's look who was nominated that year. Bill Murray was nominated for Lost in Translation. Were they going to bump out Bill Murray's performance in Lost in Translation for Elijah Wood? I don't think so. And Elijah Wood was great, but he wasn't as good as Bill Murray in Lost in Translation. Sean Penn was nominated for his performance in Mystic River, and actually Sean Penn went on to win the award that year. Was Elijah Wood better than Sean Penn in Mystic River? No, not a chance. No way. So you don't bump out Sean Penn. Ben Kingsley, and I think his best performance since Gandhi for The House of Sand and Fog. Ben Kingsley for House of Sand and Fog got nominated that year. Are you going to bump out Ben Kingsley's performance in that movie for Elijah Wood? Nope. No, you are not. One of maybe Jude Law's best performance of his career, Cold Mountain. His performance in that. Cold Mountain, I didn't love that movie, but Jude Law's performance in that, I think, was the defining performance of his career. I really do. Were you going to bump out Jude Law for that? Nope. No, you were not. And probably the best performance and most known performance, Johnny Depp got nominated. The only time he got nominated, I believe, for the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie, playing Captain Jack Sparrow. And that was a hot pick that year. There were some people that thought he was going to win that year for that. Were you going to bump him out? So there you go. Why didn't Elijah Wood get nominated? Well, because you would have had to have bumped one of those things out. See, it's not a question about why didn't he get it. You have to make a stronger argument about why he should have got a nomination. And you can't just say because he was great in the movie. That's not good enough. A lot of actors were great in their movies that year. Bill Murray in Lost in Translation, Jude Law in Cold Mountain, Ben Kingsley in House of Sand and Fog, Sean Penn and Mr. River. Like, these are some iconic performances. These are defining performances. So I don't think you can make room. So, and really, it was an ensemble piece. The Lord of the Rings films were an ensemble piece. And it was like one of the best ever. But that's why I think you didn't see any of those Lord of the Rings films get nominated for actors. This competition was just too stiff. But Ian McKellen did get one nomination. He did get one. So there is that. Okay, let's move on now to the final email question of the day. For those of you guys who are watching live, now is the time to start getting ready for your Twitter questions. You can get them ready to fire them into John Campea on Twitter. That's simple. So now let's move on to the final email question of the day before we go to the live questions. And the final email question today comes to us from Sharif Snuggs, who writes, I have a question regarding Pacific Rim, Godzilla, and King Kong all being in a shared universe. You talked about the industry having too many shared universes, and I agree. However, could these pairings be an exception? Could this pairing be a benefit to each other's own standalone films? Thanks a lot. And there's been a lot of talk in the last 48 hours about Pacific Rim, Kong, and Godzilla because the director of Pacific Rim 2 came out and said, hey, I mean, there's been some discussions. There's been chats. I mean, some places were running with, they're planning a Pacific Rim and Godzilla and King Kong crossover. No, they're not. All the director said was, I mean, it's possible that sometime in the future it could happen, but there are not plans for it to happen at this point. He just said, there have been some slight conversations. That's all there was to it. I am a big fan of Pacific Rim. I know there were a bunch of people that didn't like it, and that's totally fair. All film is subjective. That's awesome. But I did love it. I liked Godzilla. There wasn't enough Godzilla in Godzilla, but I liked Godzilla. And I liked King Kong. Had its problems. It did. Neither Godzilla nor King Kong were amazing, but I liked them both. And I really like Pacific Rim. But they do not fit together. They simply do not fit together in the same universe at all. First of all, you would be having to retcon the canon for Pacific Rim, because Pacific Rim 1, which is set in the future, pretty clearly sets out that there weren't any monsters until these kaiju started showing up. Until these monsters out of the bottom of the sea. Well, if King Kong and Godzilla are in the same universe, then yeah, in Pacific Rim's past, the Earth would have had monsters before. So that's a complete contradiction to what they said in the first Pacific Rim. But my bigger problem, you can work around that. You can just ignore what you said in the first Pacific Rim. I suppose you could do that. My bigger problem, though, is this, is why does every flipping thing have to be in a mashup shared universe film? What's the point? Why does everything have to be in a shared universe? I just don't get it. Plus, Godzilla is way bigger than Gypsy Danger or Gypsy Avenger or any of that kind of stuff. Like, way bigger. So I just don't see the potential. I don't see the point. And while some of us movie fanboys might go, oh my gosh, I like that character and I like that character, so it's going to be awesome, put it too. I think the majority of the movie-going audience would look at that. It's like, wait a minute, they're crossing over the giant robot movies with Godzilla and King Kong now. Desperate. I think the majority of the average film-going audience is going to look at that and think it's pathetic. I think they're going to think it looks desperate. And I would agree with them. I think it would look kind of sad and desperate. So I don't want that. I just want, give me a great Pacific Rim 2. Give me a great Godzilla 2. Give me a great Godzilla versus King Kong. That's fine. But you just stop it. Stop it with, let's cross over. And then after that, once they do cross over Godzilla and King Kong and Pacific Rim, then you know what we should do next? Let's cross Stranger Things in with it too. And we'll have the kids from Stranger Things running around with Godzilla and King Kong and Gypsy Danger. And then when that's done, 2 years after that, you can do a whole mashup and bring in the cast from Breaking Bad and have Breaking Bad. Oh, I guess you can't do that because you already had Walter White in Godzilla. But whatever. So where does it stop? Where does it stop? There are too many freaking shared universe movies. Just give us good single stories. Give us some great movies and just move on from that. Like I said, I think a lot of people, I often talk about my mom, who to me represents the average film going audience. I just think she would look at that potential poster and go, okay, now it's just silly. Now it's just sad. And I think that's what the response would be. But who knows? Maybe you have a different opinion. I could be totally wrong about that. Jump in the comment section. Let me know your thoughts. I'm open to having my mind changed. Okay, guys, with all of that out of the way, let's move on to one of the best parts of the show, which is talking and taking the questions that you guys who are watching live are sending in. So let me get this all set up so I can get your Twitter questions all lined up here. And we are going to start it with, if I can get this thing to work, there we go. Okay. Here we go now. The first question today comes to us from, who's it coming from? It's coming to us from AClay19, who writes, John, what movies for the remainder of 2017 could be a surprise breakout hit? I think Murder on the Orient Express could be a big one. Because I think a lot of people are underestimating its appeal to a lot of the movie-going audience that aren't your traditional, comic book movie, action film, sci-fi movie audience. I think we're going to be surprised. Now, I'm not suggesting that Murder on the Orient Express is going to make $150 million opening weekend. I'm not suggesting it's going to make $800 million worldwide. I'm not suggesting that. But I think it's going to be a bigger hit than a lot of people are expecting. And we'll just have to wait and see how that all turns out. Okay, let's move on to the next question. And the next question comes to us from Tommy Mo35, who writes, John, I think The Last Jedi trailer is too much either spoiler or misdirection. Does it bother you? I don't think it's spoiler. I do think it's misdirection. Misdirection does not bother me at all. Misdirection is fine. As long as you're actually showing us stuff that is in the movie, if you decide to use stuff that's actually in the movie, but use it in such a way to give us a little bit of misdirection, that's perfectly fine. Also, there's nothing in you guys know I think there's a lot of misdirection in The Last Jedi trailer. However, I don't think it's a misdirection about the basics of the movie. Look, we already know what the basics of the movie are. This is a story about the Resistance and the First Order, and the First Order trying to wipe out the Resistance and dominate the galaxy, and the Resistance trying to stop them. We know there's this new Force user on the scene named Rey. We know there's this fallen former Jedi apprentice in Kylo Ren. We know Luke is around, who's now going to try to train Rey. We assume at some point, blah, blah. All those are the basics of the story. The trailers weren't giving us misdirection about what the movie is about. All it's giving us the misdirection on is some misdirection on some moments in the movie. And as long as a trailer and a campaign just gives us misdirection on moments and doesn't misdirect us to what the basic idea of what the movie is, then I'm totally fine. And I don't think there was anything in The Last Jedi trailer that was a misdirect on the basic foundation of what the movie is. We already know what the basic foundation of the movie is. If you want to give us a little bit of misdirection about some moments in the film, I'm totally cool with that. I'm totally fine. But no, I don't think there's any spoilers in there either. I don't think there's any spoilers. I think, look, let me rant on this for a second. I think people need to toughen up a little bit when it comes to spoilers. Because you know what it used to be to me? And by the way, if you've never seen The Sixth Sense, I'm about to give a spoiler for The Sixth Sense, okay? So if you have not seen Sixth Sense and you're planning on watching it, mute your computer for the next 30 seconds, okay? Because I'm going to rant on this for a second. Here we go. It used to be 10, 15 years ago that a spoiler was saying Bruce Willis is a ghost all along in Sixth Sense. That was a spoiler. Something that fundamentally changed your entire perception and understanding of the movie. That was a spoiler. Letting people know, hey, Darth Vader is actually Luke's father. Something that so monumentally shifts your perception and understanding of the film, a fact that is such a bombshell, that was considered a spoiler. Everybody today has become a bunch of cupcakes. It's all about now, it's like, I'm watching a trailer. Wait a minute, that trailer showed a guy driving a car. I didn't want to know that. That's a spoiler. Everything is a spoiler now. Every freaking thing is a spoiler. And it drives me crazy. It drives me nuts. Like, there are some people out there where any minute details, like, hey guys, it was just announced that Jude Law is going to be joining that movie. Why did you say that, John? I've been trying to avoid any spoilers about that movie. They publicly announced it. They put it on the IMDb page. It's common knowledge. It's not yes, but I've been trying to go in clean. I didn't want to hear about it. And it's just, grow a thicker skin. Anyway, it does drive me a little bit nuts that everything is a spoiler now. It's like I talk about something that's in the trailer. Oh, wow, that moment in the trailer when this happens. John, you just spoil it. I didn't spoil anything. It's in the trailer. Yeah, but I'm avoiding the trailers. Then what the hell are you doing online on a movie talk show if you're not even watching trailers? Anyway, I get a little riled up about stuff like that. Anyway, so it's the definition of what a spoiler is these days is just to me absolutely laughable. What some people call spoilers. Anyway, but still, I try to respect some people's boundaries, but I'm sorry, if something is public knowledge, if something is in a trailer, if something is in publicly released information, like in a press release or on IMDb or something like that, I'm going to talk about it. I'm sorry if you consider it a spoiler. You should probably move to New Zealand and move into one of the hobbit holes until the movie comes out, because people are going to talk about that stuff that they publicly release for public information as a part of the marketing. But anyway, so no, I don't think there's anything in The Last Jedi trailer that is potentially spoilery. I don't. I think it's perfectly fine. Now, if they showed us in The Last Jedi trailer Rey turning on, taking her staff, finding out it's actually a double-bladed lightsaber, turning it on, and then stabbing Luke through the neck, and they showed us that in the trailer, then I would be with you. I would go, you could call that a spoiler. I would be with you on that. But everything else, I don't think it is. Okay, anyway, sorry for my outburst. Okay, let's move on to the next thing. Next one comes to us from Johnny in London. Greetings and salutations, John Campea. I remember Samuel L. Jackson saying that British actors are better trained and cheaper. Do you think he's right? Well, I mean, you can't put a big blanket statement down like that. But traditionally speaking, there are different ways of British actors coming up. There's a bit of a different path that British actors take for coming up, because it's all based on talent in British, when it comes to moving them along and advancing them and things like that. So are they better trained? Well, there are actors in America who get just as good training as actors in London. So now, do more of them get a certain way? Maybe they do. So I don't know. I mean, honestly, I think it's just too tough to make one big blanket statement like that London actors are better actors. Look, there's a lot of great performers that come out of the UK. Some of my favorite actors in the world come out of the UK. Absolutely. But I don't think we can make just a big blanket statement like that. So I'll disagree with him a little bit on that. Let's see. Next one comes to us from C23, who writes, John, have you heard anything about the next James Bond movie? Why do they take years? To always make another film? Because it takes a lot of years to make these movies, and everybody who's making these movies are busy and have schedules. And look, when you're planning these movies, especially a James Bond film, because a James Bond movie always usually seems to trot around the globe a lot. It feels like every single James Bond movie shoots in like 7 different countries. And that really comes through in the cinematography as well. I think that adds to the James Bond movie-going experience. I really do. The fact that they go to so many exotic locations, shoot in so many different countries around the world. I think that's one of the special things about a James Bond film. But that takes years of planning and charting and designing and all that kind of stuff. On top of that, you're dealing with other people's schedules. You got to get the script right. You got to get everybody on board. You got to schedule everything, because you only have a finite period of time to shoot it once you start shooting. So it takes a long time. And James Bond, actually, more than a lot of visual effects heavy films, like say Avengers Infinity War, where most of the movie's just shooting in Atlanta, there could take a lot longer to make a James Bond film, even though there's not nearly as many visual effects. Because, you got to plan and schedule all that travel, all these locations all around the world, moving everything, hiring different crews. I mean, it's a tough go. It's a really tough go. So we'll have to just wait and see. But honestly, I haven't heard anything other than the fact that Daniel Craig's back on board. They are making it. I haven't heard anything new, but I guarantee you there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes right now for it. So it'll come along. Okay, let's see. This next one comes to us from A. Anunoy, who writes, Hey, John, greetings from India. Hello, fans in India. It's funny. I've been getting a lot of correspondence lately from people in India. Who knew that John Campea was a big thing in India? I'm not. There are 7 people who watch me in India, and I'm glad you're one of them. Okay, so the question is, have you seen the 12 Stronger trailer starring Chris Hemsworth? I liked it. What are your thoughts? No, I haven't. This is driving me crazy because, somebody asked me the other day on the show if I've seen the 12 Stronger trailer. And I'm like, oh no, I didn't even know that was out yet. Yeah, I'm going to watch that when the show's done. And I totally forgot. To watch it. So nope, I have still not seen that trailer, but thank you for reminding me. I will make sure I watch that trailer before I do Star Wars Talk Tuesday a little bit later today. All right, let's move on to the next one. Johnny 2005 writes, John, you talk about your opinions on The Flash and Arrow, but what are your thoughts on Legends of Tomorrow? Here's my, and I have mentioned Legends of Tomorrow before, but here's my thoughts on it. The first couple of seasons, look, I always thought The Legends of Tomorrow was a bad idea for a show, but the first season was okay. And that's as far as I'll go, but it was okay. Each episode was just barely good enough to make me go, okay, I'll give it another shot next week. And then the next episode would come and I'd be like, okay, that wasn't great, but it's just good enough to make me want to check it out next week. And that kind of went on for 2 seasons. This 3rd season has started, and I haven't seen the most recent episode. The last one I saw was when they joined the circus. I'm almost ready to give up on Legends of Tomorrow, to be honest with you. And it sucks because I absolutely love Brandon Routh. I think Brandon Routh is awesome. I love watching him. I love White Canary. They never should have killed her off in Arrow. She should have been our Black Canary. She was an amazing character. Her and Oliver make a terrific on-screen couple. And I don't necessarily mean romantically. I just mean as a pair. They work great on screen together. They never should have taken her off that show. I like a lot of the characters. I think the characters are solid. I think the premise is okay, but this season has been a pretty special kind of bad. And I think I'm going to give it one more episode. And if this one next episode doesn't at least get me to go, okay, that was all right, let's see the next week, then there's too much other stuff on television to watch, and I'll probably have to abandon it. So we'll see how it goes. But anyway, those are my thoughts on Legends of Tomorrow. Let's see. Next one comes to us from Mckellan, who writes, John, if there was a best of the decade Oscars, what are your picks? No idea. That's something I would have to sit down and make a list and go over it with. Not something I can answer really quickly on a Twitter question. But thanks for writing in the question anyway. All right, next question comes to us from Nita Santi, who writes, John, would you rather watch Kingsman 3 or Man from U.N.C.L.E. 2? Oh, no question. Man from U.N.C.L.E. 2. No question. Now, if you had asked me that same question after just the first Kingsman, I'm not quite sure what I would answer. I think Man from U.N.C.L.E. is criminally underrated. I think that movie was great. Like, absolutely great. I think that's a terrific movie, and it deserved to make a lot more money than it did. And it failed at the box office. Let's not, candy coat it. Man from U.N.C.L.E. failed at the box office, but I thought the movie was great. And I thought Armie Hammer and Henry Cavill, their on-screen chemistry, these odd couple buddy cop ideas, I thought they worked great. It was a delight. I'll use that word, delight. It was a delight watching these dudes on screen together. Now, again, if you had asked me this question, would I rather see another Kingsman or another Man from U.N.C.L.E. after just the first Kingsman, I would have a tougher time answering that because I love the first Kingsman. You know what? I watched Kingsman 2 again, and I think I have moved from believing that Kingsman 2 is still good, just not anywhere near as good as the first Kingsman 2. You know what? I don't want to watch that movie again. I actually now don't think I even like Kingsman 2. It was a major step down for me. Now, generally, the response from people has been meh, and I think that's kind. And I've gone from, it's okay, it's still good, it's just not as good as first one, too. No, I watched it again, and I had to force myself to sit through it the second time. Not a big fan. So I'm honestly in a spot right now where, hell, I'm not even looking forward to another Kingsman movie. I'm not even looking forward to another one. But I am looking forward to another Man from U.N.C.L.E. I want another Man from U.N.C.L.E. instantly. So anyway, that's my thought on that. Okay, and maybe you guys think differently, which is totally cool. That's the great thing about movies. We can all see the same movies and have totally different opinions. That's the best part about being a film fan. All right, let me try a few more here. And this next one comes to us from PR Lynch 90, who writes, John, what are your thoughts on John Carpenter being involved in the new Halloween? It's tough when I don't know how involved he is. And I'll be honest with you. Remember how I just talked about, so it's great that we can all watch the same movies and have different opinion? There are, 90% of the movies I agree with the majority. Like if the majority of people like a movie, 90% of the time I like it. If 90% of the people don't like a movie, 90% of the time I'll also not like a movie. But there are movies that people love that I don't like. Blade Runner being one of them. And the first Halloween being the other one. I don't think the first Halloween's all that great. And I know, and people who are far smarter than me yell at me all the time, and I just have to be honest. Now, I could do what some other people do and just lie and say, oh yeah, that classic movie, of course I like that movie. I could lie to you, but I never lie to you. Even if it makes me look stupid, I will never lie to you. I don't like Halloween. The season I like, but the first classic movie, I don't even like it that much. I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's terrible or anything like that. Not at all. But I just don't like it. I don't think it's all that great. I don't think it stands up. But that's just my opinion. A lot of people disagree, which is totally cool. So I can't really get all that emotionally invested in, well, how involved is Carpenter going to be when I didn't even like the original that much. But let's see how involved he is, because I think that's still a little bit of a murky area. All right, let's try this. Tommy Mo 35 writes, John, Kylo Ren aiming Leia and inviting Rey to the dark side are a bit too much misdirections for me. Well, first of all, you don't know if it's misdirection. Now, I don't know if it's misdirection. We're making guesses. I'm guessing it's misdirection. But who cares? That's a moment in the film. It's a moment. It's not a big overarching plot point. It's a moment. That's all it is. So let's not overreact to some misdirection in a trailer over small moments. As long as those visuals we see are in the movie, then I'm fine with it if it's a little bit of misdirection. But John, they said this scene was going to happen. It's a moment in the film. Let's not overreact to that. I think people are overreacting just a little bit to that. So let's take a breath, take a step back. And by the way, we don't even know if it's misdirection. Let's see the movie, and then we'll know if it was misdirection or not. All right, next one comes to us from Christian25010, who writes, John, how much money will Black Panther make at the box office? You know, my estimation is getting higher because now they've put out 2 trailers. The trailers have been spectacular. It's hard to say. Right now, I'll say, because right now, remember, one big important element that's going to go into whether or not how much money Black Panther makes is how good is it. And right now, we have no idea how good or bad the movie is. It looks good. Yeah, but the Transformers movies all look good. The movie looks very good. I'm excited to see Black Panther. I think the trailers have been not just good, I think they've been spectacular. But until we know how good the movie is, it's hard to say. So without having seen the movie, having no idea how good or bad the movie is, I will take a guess and say 800 million worldwide, which is a smash hit. But I will go 800 million worldwide. I say it's going to make in the same ballpark as, say, Wonder Woman made at the box office. In that 800, a little bit north of $800 million range, which I think should be considered a big hit. So, but who knows? If we go into it and go like, hey guys, this is like one of the 3 best comic book movies ever, it could push it into the $1 billion club, 1.1, 1.2. It could push it into the Captain America Civil War range. Let's wait and see, but that's where it could go. Okay, let's try this. RACX1 writes, what happened to the Mark Wahlberg Departed prequel with Robert De Niro? Honestly, I haven't heard anything about that in ages. I haven't heard anything about that for a long time. I don't know that it ever really got established. I think there were some whispers about it. I think there were some talks about it. And maybe it got really solid. I don't know. But I'm just saying, I never heard of it becoming a solid thing. So as far as I know, it was an idea that kind of came and went. Next question comes to us from Meglaya Paul, who writes, John, will you be reviewing the latest 2 episodes of Star Wars Rebels Season 4 final during today's Star Wars Talk Tuesdays? No, because I still haven't watched them. I've got them all queued up over there on my machine. I haven't watched them yet. And here's the thing. I promised Anne I wouldn't watch them until she got home from work tonight. So I can't watch them between now and Star Wars Talk Tuesday. I'll talk about the first couple of episodes. For sure, I'll talk about those. But I made a promise. Anne's trying to, Anne's been gone for almost 2 months. She's now back. She's trying to get caught up on a lot of TV. And one of the shows she loves watching is Rebels. And I told her I would watch Rebels with her when she got home from work. So I can't. Sorry, guys. I would be in a lot of deep crap if I watched that without her. Okay, let's roll on with just a couple of more here, and then we're going to call it a day. This next one comes to us from Moses Ivy Vic OC, who writes, John, I always play the national anthem before sex because God bless America. That's a little inside joke for people who follow me on social media. All right, the next question comes to us from Giggle Zenmouse, who writes, John, today's shared universe rant was the answer to Patton Oswalt from Parks and Rec on NBC. Hey guys, if you haven't seen that, by the way, today, treat yourself, hop on YouTube, do a search for Patton Oswalt, and look for Patton Oswalt Parks and Rec Marvel rant or something like that, right? It is legendary. It is epic, and it's all ad-libbed. It is all ad-libbed. You have to go and check it out. It is so funny. It is so great. Patton is one of the treasures today in entertainment. Go check that out. All right, last question of the day, and then we will wrap things up here. And this last question comes to us from Captain Murkhar, who writes, John, hey from India again. Hey, guys in India. Have you had a chance to check out the new Adam Sandler movie, The Merowitz Stories? Reviews are great. Yeah, the reviews are great. Which is wonderful because it's good to see Adam Sandler do something that's not a straight-up comedy. Look, Adam Sandler did this movie. I know a lot of people think about Spanglish or stuff like that, but he did this movie that I think is the greatest performance that Adam Sandler has ever given, and it was called Reign Over Me. And it is a movie that I think you can make a legitimate argument that he could have got an Oscar nomination for. But ever since watching that movie, it has broken my heart to watch Adam Sandler do really crappy comedy. Crappy comedy after crappy comedy after crappy comedy. Then he put out a bunch of crappy comedies on Netflix that have been garbage. And I've always lamented that he hasn't gone back to really explore his dramatic talent. He's just got a load of natural dramatic talent. He's fantastic. So I haven't watched this movie yet. I did put it on my queue though, because Ben Stiller's in the film also. Dustin Hoffman's in it as well. I'm excited to watch it. I'm hoping I'm going to be able to squeeze out a couple hours to watch it sometime in the next 48 hours. So I will definitely talk about it once I have a chance to. But yeah, put that one on your radar, guys. It's one you should probably check out. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm hearing some very good and very positive things about it. All right, guys, that will do it for me for today's installment of the John Campea Show. Thank you so much for joining me. Don't forget, guys, a little bit later today, 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, it's all Star Wars all the time, Star Wars Talk Tuesday. Make sure you guys come back and check me out then. Also, make sure, guys, if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, click on that subscribe button. And also, if you are subscribed, make sure you click on that notification bell to make sure you get notifications. Follow me on this channel, and make sure you're following me on social media, on Twitter, simply at John Campea. That will do it for me, guys. Thanks so much for joining me. My name's John Campea, and until the next video, Star Wars Talk Tuesdays. Bye-bye.